Has a tube fly bug bitten you, or at least piqued your interest? If so, then you've discovered yet another facet of the wonderful world of rotary fly tying. Renzetti Vise long ago recognized the value of tube flies, and they developed a vise head specifically for tube flies. No longer do you have to worry about trying to avoid that sharp point of the makeshift tube mandrel you've improvised using a bodkin. Gone is the problem of tubes spinning on the mandrel because things don't quite fit and there's no easy way to lock a tube. These problems and more simply go away when you purchase a T1001S Tube Fly Vise head for your existing Renzetti Vise, or purchase the complete T1000 Tube Fly Vise. As you may know, tube flies have two major features that set them apart from traditional fly patterns. One is they have no hook, and another, as the name implies, they are tied on a tube instead of the solid metal shank of a hook. Once you come to grips with these differences, things quickly become familiar. Let's take a look at the tube and then we'll address the hook. The tube simply replaces the hook shank when tying and fishing. To start tying, you loosen the collet lock and slide the mandrel out. You slip on the tube, which can be plastic or metal. You slip it over the mandrel and slide the mandrel back into the collet lock and support. Then, while pushing firmly on the head of the mandrel, you tighten the collet lock, and just like that, you're ready to tie. Just make believe the tube is a hook shank and you're good to go. After you remove the finished fly from the vise, you'll find the hook part is pretty simple. You just slide the leader through the tube and tie on a hook. The largest saltwater tubes will even accommodate a 100-pound shock tippet. However, as always, there are little tips and tricks that help, and one tip you should know is about junction tubing. If you add a short piece of junction tubing to the end of your tube fly, you can position your hook so that the hook rides in whatever position you want it, usually hook up or hook down. There are three mandrel diameters available for the tube fly vise. They are 1/32, 1/16, and 1/8 inches. And the standard length for these is 4 inches. However, for those big pike, musky, and saltwater flies, there is a 9-inch long mandrel available. So go ahead and take the plunge. If you already have a Renzetti vise, you can buy just the tube fly rotary head and just swap it out with your regular jar assembly. If you don't already own a Renzetti vise, here's your chance to own a vise from the home of true rotary fly tying. Visit your local Renzetti dealer or the Renzetti Vise website for more information on the true rotary tube fly vise and its features. Thank you for watching. Okay, we're beginning at the end here from the looks of things, and there's a reason for that. I wanted to show you the fly tied in this video, which is a traditionally tied Mickey fin in a tube fly format. It is a stacked hair wing and a traditional tinsel body with an oval tinsel rib. You'll often see people tie traditional patterns in the round when tying tube flies, as the 3 Mickey fins on the right are. Another technique you'll often see used is incorporating the tube itself as part of the pattern. Looking at the 3 Mickey fins on the right, you see the far right one is tied on a yellow tube. Beside it, also tied in the round, is one tied on a red tube, and the one left of that is yet another tied in the round, but tied on a clear tube with the traditional tinsel body and rib over the clear tube. Those tubes are plastic, but you can buy various metal tubing and shapes for your tube fly needs. This allows you to tie the same pattern yet achieve different sink rates simply by using different tube materials for each fly. Tie one up using a plastic tube, one using an aluminum tube, and one using a brass tube, and you'll find you can easily work the water column from top to bottom with the same sized fly. And speaking of size, if you want a larger fly, another nice thing about tube flies is if you have one or more of the same pattern, you can simply hook 2 or more tube flies together, and presto, you've got a fly that's twice the size of the one you were just throwing. However, bear in mind that as you add tubes, you are adding weight, and they can become impossible to cast if you add too many. Okay, I'm going to start to tie the fly, and the first step is to swap out this mandrel and put in the size I plan to use. There are 5 quick steps to removing the existing mandrel if you want to change tube sizes. The first step is to loosen the collet lock, followed by sliding the mandrel out and setting it aside. The third step is to unscrew the mandrel support and set it with its matching mandrel. Next, removing the collet lock reveals the actual collet, which I normally store away by sliding the mandrel support and the collet onto their matching mandrel for safekeeping. Now, selecting the size mandrel you want for tying, you reverse the steps, starting by putting the selected collet in place, then capturing it by screwing on the collet lock, and finishing by screwing in the mandrel support. With that done, all you need is to select your tube, cut it to length, and slide it onto the mandrel and start tying. However, before you slide the tubing on, while it isn't necessary to melt the ends of the plastic tubes you tie on, many people do. A slight bump on the front end of the tube will keep your thread from slipping off the nose of the fly, and a slightly bigger bump on the rear will help secure your junction tubing. If you use some metal tubing, it's a good idea to line the metal tubing with a plastic tube, and melting the ends is a quick and easy way to keep everything together. With that done, slide in the mandrel and let's get started tying. Okay, you can see I already have my thread started behind the melted end of the tubing, and I'm capturing the oval rib. And you can see I've cut the tag end of the oval rib short enough so it should nest against that melted end. And here I've wrapped to the rear. See the space I'm covering just there with my thumb? That's for the junction tubing. I've wrapped back to the front, leaving that rib captured and hanging out the rear end of the tube. And I'm going to tie in some flat mylar tinsel here with the silver side of the tinsel against the tube. It will roll over and show with silver on the outside, which is what we want. Throw a quick half hitch in here and hang that thread over the bobbin cradle and start wrapping this flat tinsel to the rear of the tube and back up again, just as I wrapped my thread previously. So I start wrapping to the back, and trying to keep these wraps fairly close together so there are no big gaps. And wrapping down and back helps cover up any gaps that do happen to show through. So I'm going to wrap to the rear of this, leaving room again at the back here for the junction tubing. Turn around, start wrapping back up. Right back to the head of the fly, and I'll take my thread out of the cradle and capture this flat tinsel. I tie this stuff off, wrap behind it and a wrap in front of it, and then I can just trim it. A couple wraps to make sure it's secure, and I'll throw another half hitch in here and hang that thread out over my bobbin cradle. And grab this oval rib. Now, I started this oval rib to the front without doing a complete wrap, so I'm just going to back up. I wanted to do one complete wrap here and then start my wraps to the front. I'll just hold it at the same angle all the way through and wrap to the head of the fly and tie this off. And there we go. The body is done on this fly. And here's the first clump of deer tail or bucktail, and I'm judging the length of it, making sure that it's going to be long enough to stick out beyond the hook that I will add later. And I haven't trimmed the butt ends off these bucktail hairs. I'll make sure they're secure and then just come in with the scissors and cut them so that they will nest behind the melted end of the tube. I'll tie those down, and I'm going to put a red clump right on top of that yellow bucktail. And this red clump of bucktail is the same size bunch as the yellow clump was that's underneath it. I'll use the pinch method to trap it, use the rotary feature of the vise to check and make sure that it's where I want it. And I like that, so I'll put a yellow bunch on top of this, which completes the wing of the fly. But this yellow bunch is larger than the two previous bunches. Actually, it's the size of the two previous bunches combined. And with those three stacks, I've got a flat tinsel body, an oval rib, a stacked wing beginning with yellow bucktail, then red bucktail, then a double-sized clump of yellow. And there's a traditional Mickey fin pattern, but it's tied on a tube as opposed to a hook shank. And it's really as simple as that. Once you prepare the tubes, melt the ends, have a vise like this that accommodates tubes, you've really got tube flies licked. All you got to do is tie a few up and go out and fish them. Thank you for watching. Be sure and click the subscribe button so you'll know when we put more videos up. And let us know if you like these videos and if you think we should do more.